Welcome back to the Tharandter Rampe route in TSW2. Today we're... already screwed that up within a matter of seconds. Today we're going to be taking this Railpool BR185.6 from what I think is labelled in the service menu or something as Dresden-Altstadt. But this just looks like a goods yard. Either way, I can tell that we're on the outskirts of Dresden. And of course there's the obligatory... Since this is Dresden to Chemnitz, there's the obligatory BR143 cameo. But yeah, the route also comes with this thing. And I'll explain a little bit more as we go along, but today we're just going to wait for the signal to change for a start. Look, that's 143. We're going to wait for the signal to change and then take this thing on a light engine run to Freiberg, Sachs. If the frame rate holds. This Railpool engine.
Störung.
I have no idea what he just said. But no, this... Oh, I'm overrolling back. But this Railpool locomotive is curious because... I remember I didn't initially realise that this would be included with the route, because I thought that when I first saw the... Well, because when I first saw, I guess for want of a better word, adverts for it, I thought that the route would just come with the 612 and the BR143. Although, why is there a BR143 on what is very clearly a non-electrified siding? That's an S-Bahn service. I dare say we'll be following behind that. I must admit, I had a bit of a laugh when I first loaded up this service to see what was what, and then only to find that it was just a light engine run. And hang about, this is a freight engine. Why does it still have passenger controls? Well, actually saying that, I'm pretty sure Railpool's engines are able to haul passenger and freight. Although to me it really does look, I'm just thinking, this really does look like they've just taken the BR146/2 model from Main-Spessart S-Bahn and just slightly modified it to get the 185/6. Although there are two other variants of the 185 in TSW, like being the 185/2 and 185/5. Okay, just realised that since that passenger train that's just passed heading out towards Chemnitz, I didn't look at the destination display properly. Well, I couldn't because the train was moving, but I'm guessing it was S-Bahn, like an S-Bahn S3 service, either terminating short at Tharandter or going all the way to Freiberg. Well, I might as well... No, we don't need to, those fancy camera views, but there's that other train at a station. This is curious. I would have thought we'd be off and running by now. I just thought about possibly going over there and having a look at that 612, but A, I already drove that unit yesterday, and B, I'd prefer to try and hang around our own engine for now, just so that we can head off as quickly as we can once the signal clears. Speaking of which, I still really have next to no idea on how German signals actually work. Although I do know that some of them have like this. It's almost like a dot matrix screen just under the actual signal itself, where it'll have a number like 4, 6, or 8, and what you do is multiply that by 10, and I'm pretty sure that it's meant to be... No, there's the signal cleared at last. I'm pretty sure that how that works is that you have to multiply that number by 10. And that's how I think that's to do with the speed limit. Because sometimes, from what I've seen in Germany, they have signals that post new speed limits instead of just having speed limit signs. It's kind of like what you'd have in New Zealand. And my god, this thing accelerates quickly. It does sound exactly the same as the engines from Main-Spessart's barn, which really doesn't surprise me. Although, come to think of it, I'm pretty sure that when Skyhook Games made the BR187 for TSW, they just reused the old 185 sounds. And, hello. Didn't realise this was here. It's a nice little roundhouse with a turntable. That diesel shunter there is the same type that you saw with Nahverkehr Dresden, but for whatever reason Dovetail just reused it here instead of taking the opportunity to add another new engine to the game. Hello. Speaking of other 185 variants, there's the 185/2, which is from Main-Spessart barn. Well, actually no, originally this thing was from Riesa Nord, but then Dovetail copied and pasted, well, included it again with Main-Spessart barn. Now, one thing I've just realised I really do need to pay attention to is the absurd amount of power that this thing's got. Like, I know that generally, I know that the heavy freight wagons do actually slow down the acceleration rate quite substantially, but I still didn't realise just how powerful these sorts of locomotives are. I mean, I dare say that if I had put the throttle straight into, if I'd gone straight into full power with this thing to get moving, she would have just shot off like a rocket. That'll be an S-Bahn. This will be an S-Bahn station, I think. Already getting excessive amounts of lag. Come on. Yet again, this damn game seems to be absolutely refusing to play ball. As it often seems to do for some reason. And yet, I just managed, before this, I managed to do a run from Brighton to Seaford with a class 313, and that had had practically minimal lag, so I'm not sure what the hell's going on with this. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, I think when I saw this Railpool BR185 being, or as announced as being included in the list of engines to come with the Dresden to Chemnitz route, I was a bit confused because I had absolutely no idea what Railpool is. Although I did do a little bit of digging yesterday and found out that they are I think it's a locomotive leasing company that's based in München or Munich, and from what I gather, they rent out their locomotives to the operators, and obviously I don't know exactly what those operators are. I mean, it could be like in the US where you sometimes see Union Pacific diesels hauling a CSX or hauling a train that's actually operated by CSX. H on the signal means. Yeah, there it is again. Yeah, I'm still a complete novice with German signalling, if I'm honest. I'm also a complete novice with this route, when you think of it. One thing's for sure is that, I mean, it probably goes without saying, but running light engine, this thing's a lot easier to drive than that BR612. That we just saw earlier in that yard. One thing I didn't know about this part of Germany until I got this route was that once you get out of Dresden heading out towards Chemnitz, it really doesn't take too long before you're in a very cramped valley, a very narrow valley where the railway is essentially forced to constantly go around some incredibly sharp curves. And look, there's those narrow gauge coaches I was blabbering about yesterday. And it really, it's almost like an even more narrow, or like winding and narrow slash cramped version of Riesa Nord. And even then, I think on that route, well, yeah, I think on that route at least, it's a testament. The fact that you can only go up to 120 kilometers an hour on that route, to me at least, that really is a testament to how rugged that terrain is, I suppose you could say. And I'm surprised that they're able to pull off lines like that with what I think is standard gauge. Because normally you would expect just to have narrow gauge lines in that sort of territory. Because the thing with narrow gauge is that that same S-Bahn service that we saw earlier. I think it is. I didn't think we'd be overtaking that lot. It's like what bogies said to Duck and Oliver once. Yabu snobs! Only to promptly get stuck under a bridge less than a few minutes later. Well, not really less than a few minutes later, but you get the idea. That's curious. I wonder where we're going. Is this some diversion route or something? Doesn't seem that way, but it does look like we're going around the other side of the... Oh, we're going round the... Man, this thing really should have... I just realised this thing's got no track running sounds. Or at least none that I can hear. But yeah, there's that... I've already forgotten the name of that station, but yeah, there's the yards for the narrow gauge. Is it... I think it's Weisseritz Valley Railway. I think that's what I found yesterday, but... I won't prattle on about the narrow gauge stuff again, because I'll probably just sound like a broken record and end up saying the same sort of stuff that I said yesterday. Oh, I didn't realise it followed the narrow gauge followed standard gauge this far out of the station. But yeah, that does look like a nice setting. Oh, there are some track sounds, it's just that you can barely hear them. Hello, there's another station. I'll just make for a decent screenshot if I can. Of course, the shadows from the trees always have to ruin it. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, to me, this... Well, let's see what happens when you do full power. That is nuts. Like, how can a locomotive possibly accelerate that quickly? Like, is it even, in other words, are these physics even slightly realistic? Because I obviously don't know for certain, since I know nothing about the real, or since I know almost nothing about Railpool in real life, let alone the BR185 locomotives. And yeah, speaking of 185s, I do remember that the Deutsche Bahn Red and MRCE Black versions, I swear those things don't have controls for the like passenger doors inside, and yet here we have like another variant of the 185, and yet it does have door controls. Wait a minute, it's got, I've just realised, this has got the 60k speed limit. What's the station? Oh, it's Tharandter itself. That's where most S-Bahn services terminate. But I think it's on weekdays. What's that? Oh, it's 612. No, 2 612s. And yeah, Tharandter's normally where the S-Bahn trains terminate, but apparently during the peak period on weekdays, they do continue the service to Freiberg, Sachs. So presumably Tharandter is like the regular terminus of the line, with Freiberg acting as almost like an alternative. But yeah, as I was saying, I've just realised this thing's got like passenger door, like this lever to do the passenger doors, which wouldn't do anything now since we're just light engine. But I remember that on the 146 there's another little dial here, or like a little knob there, where you can control which side of the train the doors will open on, but that's obviously missing on this thing. So yeah, I'm just wondering why this thing's got that lever to open and shut the doors, but essentially no other form of passenger door controls. As it stands now, just trundling along through this incredibly narrow valley, and yeah, I'm not used to speed limits like 80 kilometers an hour on the main line, especially on German routes. Normally, from what I've experienced, they can regularly get up to like 100 or 120 kilometers an hour on average. And of course, there's bits of Schnellfahrstrecke, Köln to Aachen, and Hauptstrecke München to Augsburg, where the ice trains can absolutely scream along those lines, faster, going in excess of 200 kilometers an hour. So it's certainly quite a land of, a land of contrasts, especially with its railways. Now, what's curious about this service that I'm driving today is that this couple to formation 12 vehicles option. Well, it's not really an option, but this instruction, that's all you've got for this service. Like, I didn't think that there would. Oh god, how did I not notice that reduction in the speed limit sooner? No, what was I saying? Yeah, I didn't. When I first loaded up this route, I didn't think that there would be any light engine movements in the timetable mode. The only other instance I can think of where you definitely do get the opportunity to do light engine movements are on Sandpatch grade. Like if you do I think it's when you return the helper locomotives from Sandpatch Summit back down the hill to Cumberland. So we're coming up on another station. This is Edelkrone. I never seem to get these pronunciations right. And I'm just thinking that station that we just passed would be one of the ones that would presumably be served by the S3 line, but only in the peak. Just have a dog barking. Wonderful. That thing can be a right terror when she starts barking. Considering that the DB BR143 is a tilting train, I would have thought that it would have like special exemptions to some of the speed limits, but I guess I would assume that this part of the line, especially between Tharandter and Freiberg Sachs, you would think that there would be no exemptions to the speed limits, considering how sharp these curves are. Look at that, there's no way you'd be able to get a train going even 90 around that curve safely, let alone past the ton. And also 1 in 40. God, this is probably, I'd say this is like the steepest, the most severe, the steepest. I'd say these are like the steepest, or the most steeply graded German routes that we've got in TSW so far. I mean, I don't know what the absolute steepest line in the whole country is, but I can't imagine this would be it. So I do seem to recall that, yeah, as I was saying yesterday, Main-Spessart Bahn, I think, has that section of about 1 in 50 part of its route. But I guess in that instance, that's more of a special exemption. This one, I can't tell exactly what the ruling grade of this route is, but I can tell you this: when I was first driving along here with the BR612, I had absolutely, like, coming in from Chemnitz, I had absolutely no idea that I'd be having to deal with gradients as severe as this. Although multiple units like that 612 can probably just waltz up and down these inclines without any problems. In terms of being able to pick up speed, that is. I mean, obviously we're having no trouble today with the BR185.6, but that's because we're just running light engine. And because yeah, I dare say that if we were hauling a train, then we'd have a lot of trouble trying to not so much maintaining speed. If anything, I imagine that would just be easy. No, the challenge would be to try and pick up speed, I would imagine. There's a nice little river along the side of the railway here. It's like a part of Main-Spessart Bahn, I think, somewhere between Gemünden and Lower Bahnhof. I've probably pronounced that, I've probably horrifically mispronounced that again. It's it's spelled L-O-H-R from memory. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that. I can really get a sense of like just how powerful this locomotive is, because even if you just put it throttle slightly past like 25% or something, you'll soon realise that no, what I'm saying is, if you've never driven this sort of thing before, don't set the throttle too high. Like, in my case, I think I'm trying to not go past 30% of power. I mean, this thing accelerates fast enough on any throttle setting. You don't really need to go absolutely nuts. And I guess especially with a freight train, I think in that instance, you'd want to start off with only a relatively small amount of power to try and to get up to speed, but presumably without either wheel slipping or breaking the couplers. Weird, the phone's just gone ping. Wasn't expecting that. There's a messenger ping and all. I guess I'll have to check that when I'm finished with this run. And for the most part, I am like just keeping my eyes on the track, although it's a little bit difficult because we've got the ruddy pop filter in the way. Considering we had that S-Bahn train go past us at the start, I would have thought we'd be like chasing yellows the whole way. Considering those S-Bahn trains generally stop at every station. But I didn't realise that there was that avoiding line, as it were. And as we saw earlier, there was that point where we actually even got to overtake that BR143 and those two Doppelstockwagen coaches. Siding one off to the left there. I wonder if that's somewhere where actually I can't even tell what that is. There's another station. Right. This is Klingenberg Chemnitz. No, again, no idea how to pronounce that accurately. Now that glare from the sun is making it a bit hard to read what this safety notice is. Oh, that's not a good idea. Try and pull the blind down to read that this presumably a cleanliness notice, and then you completely obscure your view, which is obviously never a good idea. Thinking like this area now, where we are now, we were just waltzing along through, on top of the hills, almost like at the top of the hills in a much wider well, I don't know if you can still call it a valley at this point, but this is certainly a hell of a contrast to what we were just going through earlier around Tharandter. I mean, it is called the Tharandter Rampe, which is like the Spessart ramp, that bit of 1 in 50 between is it Laufach and Heigenbrücken. And yeah, I'm guessing that ramp name, which is RAMPE, I'm guessing that just refers to a specific section of track with steeper than normal, or with gradients that are steeper than usual. Yes, it seems that, unlike that run yesterday with the 612, it seems like this run with the 185 is going, to me at least, it feels like it's going slower than usual, even though this is actually the shorter of those two runs by quite some way. I'm thinking next time I drive on this route it'll be possibly with the possibly just with the BR143 on an S-Bahn service from Freiberg, Sachs to Dresden-Altstadt. Should be interesting, especially with those pretty severe speed restrictions we were seeing earlier. And then there's also the fact that the game won't stop lagging. There's also the fact that the 143 is, in my opinion at least, quite a difficult locomotive to drive. I'm trying to handle that with the intense stop-start nature of an S-Bahn service. I imagine that'd be quite a challenge. Although I don't get why the Dresden S-Bahn uses the locomotive haul coaches instead of multiple units. Because in my case, I'm used to hearing of S-Bahn services like in München and Frankfurt, where they do primarily use multiple units. Although my guess is that in those instances, it's because of the underground sections under the centre of these cities, and obviously and I think in those instances the tunnels are too small to take the double-decker coaches. But what I've just realised is that the S-Bahn network around Dresden doesn't have an underground section under the centre of the city. So as far as I can tell, it doesn't need one. And my guess is that that's why presumably the Deutsche Bahn would then take advantage of being able to use double-decker coaches, and the rest is history. As for why they still use those old BR143s, I don't really know. I think on Nahverkehr Dresden you can also get like the 146s on some S1 services. But I found last night that the whole S-Bahn Dresden S1 route from Schona to Main-Spessart is about 77 kilometers, and unfortunately the only part of that route that you get in TSW is, I think it's about 28 kilometers between Dresden-Hauptbahnhof and Main-Spessart, which I just think that's far too short of a section. Of course, S2 has it even worse, because the only part of the S2 line that you get is between Dresden-Hauptbahnhof and Dresden-Neustadt. Why Dovetail didn't at the very least continue to the airport, I have no idea. And that was one of the biggest selling points with this Dresden to Chemnitz route, is that it includes the full length of the S3 line between, as I said, between Dresden-Hauptbahnhof and Freiberg, Sachs. Hello, I wonder what those great big those spindly little towers are on about, unless it's just like smokestacks for a power station or something. It's like what I've seen in Huntly, where you can just about be anywhere in that town, and the giant stacks of the power station pretty much dominate the skyline. severe speed restriction. Don't really remember too much of this run going the other way yesterday with the diesel units, but I do remember I was running quite late. Of course, in this instance, you can be a little bit more relaxed in the sense that there's no specific timetable that we have to adhere to. As you can tell there in the corner, it just says couples of formation, and there's no, it doesn't list any specific time when we have to be there. Around the sharp curve, and that's right, there's the station here. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why this bloody frame rate is so inconsistent. It's Moldenhutton, however you meant to say that properly. But as I've always said, I wouldn't know for certain. Now, one thing I've just realised is that I don't know exactly what type of wagons we'll be picking up. But my guess is that the next service after this one would be presumably the locomotive, the driver having to change ends and then head back towards Dresden. There's a huge bridge, or I suppose it's more of a viaduct. There's about 2 or 3 of them on this route. But yeah, that is weird. Like, if you zoom out, you don't have to zoom out that far from this locomotive on the external camera before you start hearing no track running sounds at all. And I don't know what's going on there. It's like either it's just the way I've got my audio set up, or it's just that dodgy from the outset. Oh crap! Speed limits again. I mean, this whole action point system, as I said before, is ridiculous, because even if you just go like 1 or 2 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, like look, it'll say driving over the speed limit. I mean, I've heard of overreactions, but that's just ridiculous. Oh no, there's a red signal. That's a point. No, that was a yellow signal that we just went past. This red one is further out from the station. So I'm wondering if we'll have to. Because I think from memory the yard at Freiberg Sachs is on one specific side of the station, and so I'm guessing that engines coming from Dresden would have to go through a crossover. And now I'm even further guessing that we'll have to stop. Obviously, have to stop at the signal and then let another passenger service, presumably just a passenger service, go out in front. Well, not in front, but go in front of us, but going the other way, if that makes any sense. Now, one thing I've noticed about TSW that is somewhat annoying is that there's no option where you can check it to make sure that passing the signal at danger doesn't throw you out the scenario. Whereas the old train simulator does have that feature. I have no idea what that automatic message was. I hate to think how much work would have gone into digging this cutting in real life, considering there's these precarious rock faces on both sides of the track here. Now here's a thought. Once we can stop. What does this mean? Like this like this yellow 2/3 of a triangle on a post? It's obviously something to do with the signalling, but I still don't really know what it means. I'm trying to get a shot of the engine waiting at red signals. It's curious that Dovetail have brought in this Railpool engine, because this is obviously, like, I think it's obviously a private company. It's not as big, obviously not as big as like Deutsche Bahn or anything, but even so, I still find it interesting to see these sorts of private companies being represented in the game, considering that for the most part we just get Deutsche Bahn. Okay. It looks like the points are all set for us to go into the siding, so I'm wondering if we'll have to... contacting proceed at restricted speed. Okay, if you say so, but the signal hasn't changed to reflect that authorization to pass. I hope this works. As indeed it did. Yeah, that's right. That I think I've just worked out why that signal was red in the first place. It's because the points are set to take us into that track that's already occupied by those wagons. But I know that, at least from what I've seen when I've come into Brighton station at one point back in Train Simulator, is that even though there might be another train or consist on the same track that you're about to go on, you can just get special permission from the signaller in order to go past the signal even when it's still red. But that is obviously a special exception, because ordinarily you absolutely do not go past a red signal unless you get permission from the signaller. And even then, you can't just go and randomly request to pass. I would assume you couldn't randomly just go and request to pass the signal at danger. But, yeah, this is obviously coming up on Freiberg, Sachs, which is where we'll end our run. Right as I can hear a plane going over my house. Seems that almost every time I do one of these sorts of videos, so you can hear at least one plane. That reminds me, I think once I've finished this run this morning, I'll get some breakfast and then possibly go out to film some real trains, since I got that new camera yesterday. It can't shoot 4K, but it does at the very least go up to 1920 by 1080 and can do 60 frames a second, which was good enough for me, especially since I wasn't comfortable spending the amount of money that would be necessary to get a camera that can shoot in 4K. Actually, that's something I just thought of something I'll try. I'm going to try and get a screenshot of this locomotive inching up to these wagons. That's the other thing, is that you absolutely can't just come screaming up to these wagons like a maniac. You do have to approach them very slowly. That's not too bad of a scene there, with the BR185 in the foreground, and then that pair of Doppelstockwagen coaches with the BR143, although I have just noticed that there's something seriously wrong there. That's glitched through the buffer stop, and then this front bogie is off the line, but the wheels are still glitched and showing the wheels are still spinning, obviously with motion blur on. And then here's this other... oh my god, what on... how the hell did this happen? I'm surprised it hasn't broken the ruddy game. Oh, hello. There's a random Vossloh G6 here. Wasn't expecting that. I thought this thing was confined to Rhine-Ruhr-Osten. I guess obviously I stand corrected. Well, if you're still watching it by this point, first of all, thank you. But second, please let us know if you've seen that sort of glitch yourself with the those glitched bogies on the Doppelstockwagen coaches, because I'd be curious to know if like Dovetail Games could somehow be made aware of it to hopefully fix it. But yeah, I'm just thinking that it wasn't just the 185 that, no, the glitched bogies in the Doppelstockwagen cars that surprised me. It was also seeing that random G6 on the other side. So yeah, that has been well, not relatively quick, but still shorter than the run with the 612. Either way, that's been my coverage of the Railpool BR185/6 on the Dresden to Chemnitz route. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it and been able to tolerate me prattling on for ages. And yeah, we'll see you next time.